Right, let's see if we can shim this thing out. So, I've put the overdrive gear on, and I've put the shim that was on there when I took it apart. Still think there's a fair amount. I mean, that's in the slot there, you can still see it moving. I've got no idea what is going on with this thing. I've got no idea why this shaft is so far out. Let's put that one on as well. So I've now got two shims on there. I wouldn't necessarily want to have it with two shims on there. I'd find the nearest shim to it. Get that on. It's going to go on there, I'm sure of it. There we are. That looks a lot tighter. Now we're in. Now it makes sense, because now I'm holding that slip ring in the groove and I can't feel the shaft behind moving. So now let's just double check. Of course, picked up the feeler gauge and everything's fallen back inside. Is it that one? 2000, there we are. Behave yourself, feeler gauge. Pry bar, pry bar, pry bar, pry bar. Right, it's as far forward, sorry, far backward as the shaft is going to go. Put the ring in and measure behind, and that is tight. But it goes in. I'm going to put the split here. I'm going to put the ring on and I'm going to take it from there. Now, how did I do this last time? I did it with a screwdriver. Let me get the screwdriver. Mr. Busted the screwdriver. I mean, obviously, because we're working inside the transfer side of the gearbox, I'm trying to keep everything as clean as I possibly can. We'll position the ring roughly in place, and then what I really want to do is stretch the ring over the teeth, one at the time, like this. Whoops, that's going so well then. That nearly worked. It probably would have worked if my hands hadn't been frozen. Right, let's do that again. Oh, you fucker. This might be a tomorrow job, yeah. This might just be a tomorrow job. Let me do it. If I hold it up there, put that down there. Oh my God! And then stretch the slip ring across the input shaft. There we go. That's a better idea. Last time I did one of these, it was on the bench. A lot easier. I've got a snow forecast this weekend. Be a laugh, shouldn't there? Right, now it's over. Needs to walk back. Oh! And and the gear needs to come forward. And you can see now the slip ring has gone in. What's the end flow like? Right, let's see if we can get 5 thou in here. Yep, so we are going to need to shim this further. 5 thou goes in. Let's go up in increments of 2. 7 thou go in. Yep. 10 thou because it's just there. Oh fucking hell, 10 thou goes in. It's a lot tighter though. So that gap I was going to suggest is 10 thou. I'll check 11 thou. 11 thou is a pinch. Hear that? Goes in, it's a pinch. Between 10 and 11 thou I'm going to guess. Right, so probably what I need to do now is get the fucking slip ring off, measure the shims that I've got. Write it down first of all, Richard, because otherwise what's going to happen is 10 thou, slip ring off. Slip ring off. It's actually a lot easier than putting it on. So all I'm going to do there is just lift out the ends. I say it's a lot easier. It's a lot easier the first time I did it. Oh. Help if I had some fucking decent screwdrivers, they'd really would. Really. La la la. La la la. Oh, I know why I did this last time. I had this cover off and I prized it out once the slip ring had popped out. So there you go. So this screwdriver goes in here. Let's rotate around. We're in a gear now, aren't we? So we need to come out of whatever gear we went into, which was that one. So we're out of gear. And transfer is in neutral, so I should be able to rotate that, and I can. Let's rotate that. Let's get a long screwdriver through here. And you can see as I'm going around, I'm just sitting the screwdriver in between the slip ring and the screwdriver that I'm using to prise the slip ring out of. I was about to fucking go back in again. Over here though. Now that that is almost out there, I actually want that to stay out. So now it's come off the outside edge, and I couldn't get a reliable measurement using it in the way that the manual wanted me to do with the slip ring upside down in the slot. So this can come off. Oh, that's fantastic, Richard. Yeah, I just dropped one of the shims into the sump. Let's hope they're made out of steel. Mr. Magnets? There we are, Mr. Magnets. I'm going to change the oil on this thing before it all goes back together again. But basically what I'm going to do now is add to the thickness of these two to the 10 thou that I've got, deduct 2 thou, and that's the shim size I'm going to need in the region of. The Moore and Wright micrometer is in great order, so let's check shim number 1 is 25 plus 6, 31 thou. My shim number 2 is quite a bit fatter. Ah, 50, 66 thou. Just for shits and giggles, combined thickness. Can't see that. That's just 75 plus 22, 97 thou. Oh, fucking hell, matches up. I like that. 97 thou plus the 10 thou will give me 107 thou. Less the 2 maximum gives me 105 thou. What shim sizes have we got by standard? We have got they go up to 79 thou. 71 to 79 thou. Well, I got 31 thou here, which is weird, isn't it? So I'm going to have to go and do a little bit of analysis, but now I know what size I need on that. It's 300 thou shim, basically, which might indicate that there's a problem somewhere within this gearbox, but I'll have to go back through my records, work out, but you can see how I have come to that conclusion of, you know, the shim size I need. So we had a gap of 10 thou, just over 10 thou. I've measured the 2 shims that were in there at 31 thou and 66 thou. It's a total of 97 thou, 107 thou, less the 2 thou gap I need, gives me 105 thou that I need to make up. Well, a slight cock up in that I kind of I fixed it, videoed all the footage, ran out of storage yesterday, and then deleted the footage. Good effort that, Richard. So here's what I did. It's kind of not where this channel's going to be going moving forward. I'd like to show you how I did these things, but I think by now you know how I get a snap ring off. You know how I'm measuring the end float on the main shaft. So basically, with the measurements that I'd already taken, I ordered 3 sets of shims. I ordered these ones, the 593819, 593820. 3 sets of shims. Now, in this manual, they're all helpfully laid out in millimetres, and all my measurements, as you know, are put in thou. Now, the instructions did say these shims came in 2 thou increments. So if I convert 2 mil into thou, it comes up as 79 thou. Convert 1.95 thou millimetres into thou, 77. So by that I'm able to deduce 79, 77, 75, 73 thou on these 4 shims here. Ordered these top 3 here. That one's not in stock. Bugger. Right. But what? No, sorry, the middle one wasn't in stock. Bugger. So what I did get was the biggest of these 3 shims, 593820, which is 77 thou. And the smallest of the shims, 593818, which is a 73 thou. I reckon I need 74 thou. So I popped a 73 thou in and put all the snap ring and everything back together in there, which caused a lot of shouting and screaming and fighting and farting. And it was 4 thou. It was still 6 thou, so the gap was still 6 thou. Okay, maybe there's some indifferences between the shims. So then I'm thinking, well, hang about a second, I've got a 73 thou and I've got a 77 thou. Well, the difference between those is 4 thou. So why don't I just take out the 73 thou shim, put in the 77 thou shim, and hey presto, no end float. So yeah, that's pretty much how I do it. Now the end result, which you've been looking at quite a lot in this video so far, is like that. So that's now the overdrive gear drive on the end of the main shaft with the correct number of shims, or the correct shimmage behind, and yeah, snap rings back in place again. So next up, really need to put the overdrive in place, but that's going to take place later on, because I still need to just double check tolerances inside the overdrive unit, which I'm going to go through now. Right, let's have this overdrive unit back together again, because I'm fed up with looking at it. I've got the gearboxes all sorted out now, so all of the end float's been taken up in the centre differential. So the next thing really is going to be to get this together. Now, my machine shop is making these for me. They're unavailable for a while. He's making them for me because they're unavailable. And as you saw already, the one that came off the car was broken. Broke there, if you remember rightly. So I've actually robbed this of one of my overdrive units, which might seem a bit, well, why didn't you just put the overdrive unit? Well, this is the customer's overdrive. So what I really need to do is change the seals on this bastard and fit it. I need a knife for that, Richard. Weather's a bit shit outside today. Actually, no, I'm going to change my mind on that. The weather's a lot shit outside today. Fucking horrendous. Right, so just going to cut. Oh, very brittle O-ring. That just snapped. That's how brittle that was. Look. Dear oh dear. Right, so yes, they're probably about time. I think we might have got our money's worth out of that O-ring. So just to repeat, it's a used, old stock but serviceable push rod, selector rod that's going in, and I'm going to be then putting the new rod back into my car, back into my unit, which is on the floor. So let's find some O-rings first of all. Go for the Imperial box. I reckon about that size, if not slightly bigger. It's got quite a deep groove to sit in. Nah, bigger. It's going to be a number 12, which is, looks like a 3/8 O-ring, which actually looks like it's about right. I'll put some oil and Vaseline on these before it all goes back together again. Well, it sits below this. It sits properly in the groove, and the top of the O-ring is just proud of the groove, so I'm happy with that. Let me just see what the other one looks like. Next size up. Next size up is fatter. So it is a 3/8 with a 9/16 outside diameter, and you can see that's far too big. Just said fars. Right, 2 O-rings on selector shaft. Marvellous. Now, selector shaft goes in thus. There is the balls, the detent ball goes in from the underside, and the top side has got this locking pin, which I have put somewhere, probably inside this box here. So there's two, do you remember there was 2 plugs that held things in. The top one is a smaller diameter, and basically the idea is that when the shaft is in place, it sits in this groove and stops the shaft from coming right out. Okay, so we'll pop that back in. Oh, one thing I do need to do is I'm just going to pull the selector rod out. Ah, there goes the shoe. I hadn't actually pulled this out before, but there's the shoe that sits in the selector ring. Just want to check that it's serviceable, and it might be a bit on the worn outside, this one. This is the shaft and shoes out of the other Overdrive. Let's move this light over here so we can see what's going on. Hands are getting oily. Funny that, Richard. These look new. These actually look new compared to these ones. So this is the one that I've just taken from my Overdrive unit. So I'm going to have to add a pair of new shoes. I think that they're just a bit too shagged out. Sorry, that's a new one. That one can go back in its bag. It's not right. It's a gearbox shoe, selector rod shoe, or selector fork shoe I should say, rather than an Overdrive. Now I could probably get an Overdrive fork machined out to accept these if you can't get the selector shoes new anymore. Right, so let's get this shaft in, turn you off, you're off. So we got the shaft holding the top shoe, positioning the bottom shoe onto the selector wheel, positioning the top shoe onto the selector, and we're in. And then we got the throbbing rod. Let's put Vaseline around those. Probably a bit excessive, Richard, but fuck it. Lift the rod up. I need to be able to swivel this. Of course it's too slippery now, so I'll just use the Allen key just to push the rod through. In we go. There's the selector groove, because there's a groove on the rod that the selector pin goes into, which is more or less about there. Now the bolt won't come out because it's got the top cover in place, so I really do not see a huge amount of point in putting a thread lock on it. There's no way will the bolt come out completely. Just makes it more difficult for the next person down the line. Right, and then we've got selector ring. Does it work? Right, so there's one way. And then got a nice rifle bolt action to it. I couldn't tell you if the synchro rings are any good on this. I am wondering whether we take this fucking thing apart or whether we just trust it. Now what we haven't done yet, we haven't put the retaining pin in. The retaining peg goes into the top hole. No need for thread lock because the cover, top cover, covers it over. And I suspect it will get to the bottom of the hole and then stop moving. Well, it's tight. Now, does it work still? Or have I done it too tight now? Might need thread lock on it. Having said that, it might just need thread lock on it. Yeah, it's going to go down too far, so I can only wind it down so far, and then it's going to come loose in service. A bit further. See, I'm wearing my gloves today. Still selects. Just when I do it up tight, it no longer selects. Tell you what we'll do. Might be a bit unorthodox here. I'm just going to file the bottom off the plug. I think it's probably going to be the easiest way, because you probably need to take a millimetre off this. It's got like a big platform on the bottom, and I reckon that I can just file a bit of that off So we'll take our measurements, top to bottom. Otherwise this thing stays in, it doesn't go in tight enough, and that will worry me. Right, so this thing top to bottom is 12.08 millimeters. File. Fuck you. Then you drop that. Then you found myself going into the spares, sorry, my spare overdrive, not my spares overdrive for another bit then. So I've just chamfered the edges. It's not quite so sharp. Oh. La 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 la. How long does it take you to put an overdrive selector shaft into an overdrive box? I think that is going to do it. That's going to do it. It's not going to go any tighter. It's as tight as I've been doing it. And it now selects. Right, so next thing we need to do, top cover on. Got a new gasket somewhere. Off. Where's the new gasket gone? Well seal. Do we think that should be thread locked? I'm inclined to thread lock it. After all that bollocks, folks, I'm inclined to thread lock this. It shouldn't come loose. If it did, then you're going to have an issue. Now, even with it loose in there, you can see the shaft is still operating the fork. Yeah, so the shaft still operates it with the bolt loose and right up the inside of the cover. So that was my reason, that rationale for not doing it. However, it's a pinch bolt. So let's pinch it. Right, so like that. So we can get this thing to come off again. It works. Bear in mind that everything is kind of, so I've replaced the shoes, I've replaced the seals, and it's all working beautifully that now. So I'm happy enough with that. That's all working well. Thick gasket. Remains of old gasket coming off. If you don't clean all the old gasket off, then obviously you're not going to get a good seal with the new gasket. So clean the old gasket off. I'll do that. Cloth. Right. And then more of this shite. Expecting questions about, oh, Richard, where did you get the applicator for the stag well seal from? Ah, well, I sell these. My phone. I sell these applicators at great expense. You have your personalised stag well seal applicator by sending a stamped addressed envelope and a cheque for £5 to Get Rich Quick. Get Rich Rich. Right, let's let that go on for a second. Put the lid on the well seal. Okie doke. Now, On the leading face here, there's some big notches. It's not going to help the gasket seal against the gearbox. So what I do, file and wipe on wet cloth. It's just been knocked around, I think. Big one down there. So I had a screwdriver go in there, look. Someone's been wedging screwdrivers in. Hope that wasn't you, David. Owner. Fucking great screwdriver dent there. You probably didn't need to do that. Right, that's out. That's out. That's out. Another one there, look at that one. That's a beauty, that one. Fuck's sake. Yeah, I think that someone had a struggle getting this off, I reckon. 1, 2, 3, 4 screwdriver wedge holes. Right, get myself organised and we'll lob this in. I've got the gear and I've got the spacer. There's that and there's that. Snap ring is spare. Spacer, gear, spacer, can't remember. Manual! So in which case, the snap ring, yeah, that would make, so, it doesn't really fucking help, does it, Richard, but you can't actually see what's going on here. So what I'm looking here is the output shaft of the Overdrive, yeah, which has got the tooth washer in it, and into that goes the clutch ring, which is fixed onto the end of the main shaft on the gearbox. Then it's showing the big bearing, followed by a packing piece. Then we've got the thrust washer. Now the thrust washer and the spacer, I believe, go behind the clutch gear, or whatever it is, gear, selector gear, and then the snap ring. So to my mind, it looks like the big bearing goes into the Overdrive unit, followed by the big fat packing spacer. And the thrust washer sits behind the gear on the main shaft. Right. Let me have a look now at what RTC 7229 is. No longer available. Overdrive main shaft, Overdrive classic parts, linkage rod. Yeah, I think that's how it goes. So we end up with the big washer goes in there, followed by the this packing piece. Now what I'll do is I'm just going to go and look in the end of the gearbox. This big old washer goes right over the top and sits on the output shaft in there. Okay, then we've got the big old bearing goes over the top of that. Okay, then the Overdrive goes on. Okay, which makes sense. What I need to do really though is get the gasket. The one gasket is here. Look at that. Lovely. Yes. Right, gasket's in place. Let's get this bloody Overdrive on. Not the lightest thing in the world, but in theory, God help us, it needs to go. Maybe this is why they put the bearing in the end of the shaft first of all. I can can leave the spacer on there because that's fine. Are we in neutral? We're in neutral. Because it should then be able to move the gearbox around. Oh my god. It's honestly, it's not the lightest thing on the face of the planet. Right. Why is it not going any further? Torch. It is going further. It's just that the casing has to go into the end of the gearbox. Right, now I can put some bolts in now. Top two bolts we need to leave for the selector mechanism. Get the first bolt aligned. That's in. And then there's a captive bolt or even a stud on the other side of the overdrive, which also I need to try and encourage to go in. There's my 1/2 inch spanner over there. And then we can mess around, I think, with linkage. And also seal all the top covers of this gearbox up. And obviously everything's been undone. Right, rule number 1, don't do all the bolts up until they're all in. In. Oh. And in. Oh my goodness. I'm going to put all these covers on. So, that's 6 of the 8 done tight. There's no point in doing the last 2, it's not going to go anywhere. Put that there, gaskets can come over here, top cover can come off, and we are going to go into a gear. I think that's in the gear. Oh, handbrake's on. That's in the gear, and we are turning the main shaft on the gearbox. So, let me bring you up here a second. Clank, 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 clank. Main shaft on gearbox is turning. Alright, so it means that by turning the prop shaft, I'm turning the gearbox, then we've got to have drive through the overdrive. Okay? Right, I'm going to sit down and have a cup of tea.